Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Incubate This, sponsored by GotAnAppIdea.com. Today, there's been a lot of stuff in LinkedIn lately about work culture. There's a lot of companies that are, like big companies on sort of a national, international stage that are trying to figure out how to create better retention and how to make people more happy and more engaged, more satisfied in their jobs. And all of this stuff sort of speaks to work culture. I mean, that's sort of what we call it, work-life balance. And so we wanted to talk about this a little bit, talk about some of the strategies that are out there, and ultimately just sort of get some viewpoints on what is this really and how much does it really matter? Is it a Band-Aid for something else? So some of the strategies that I've heard recently, one of them, and in fact, a friend of mine who owns a company here in town they do fractional sales, like a fractional CMO, fractional sales kind of roles, building sales teams in big organizations. She actually offers unlimited PTO, which is typically a strategy that a larger company can do. She's got like 6 employees, but she offers this and she says it works.
Now, my question is does she also require that they use some PTO?
I don't know. I know that that's also a thing where and as when I was a manager, one of the things that I did was we started with 2 weeks and then everybody added a week till they got to like 6 or something, I think, at that company. And these guys actually worked with me there. And after my first 6 months, I realized there were a bunch of people who had been at the company way longer than I had working for me who hadn't taken a vacation in years. And I actually started asking them well, you have all this vacation time sort of stored up. Because
they didn't have a use it or lose it policy.
No, they didn't. They just would store it up and, you could bank up to 8 weeks, I think. And so most of them, when it would start getting close to 8 weeks, they'd take a few days or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I remember asking, and one of the gals, she said, well, I almost never see the owners of the company take vacation. I almost never see any of our managers take vacation. So I feel like if I do it, I'm risking my job. And I was like, okay, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
So I organized my entire life. It took me 4 months to set it up. And I took 2 weeks off. I had no cell phone. I had no computer. I had no email. And before I went and when I got back, I was like, I'm doing this because I want you to see no one is so indispensable that you can't have a life.
Was that when you guys went on the cruise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went on a cruise that started in Italy and ended up in Croatia, and we spent a couple extra days in Italy and a couple extra days in Croatia. And after that, a few of those people actually did take vacations. And I was like, okay, so it's fine to have unlimited PTO and to say, just be responsible and make sure that your duties are managed and all of that. But how much do people have fear around the consequence of actually taking it?
Little do you know that while you were gone, it was like that scene in Airplane when they announced that there was no food left. It was bedlam inside the office.
No. No.
No, you're right. It was fine.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Did people start taking more vacations after that? Did they?
Yeah. One of our best project managers, she finally took a week off and went with her kids somewhere before they started back to school. And it was there was a bunch of people who used 2 or 3 weeks of their vacation before the end of that year.
But that bringing that back around, that highlighted the culture there. And I would guess it was unintentional because the reality was the two owners did take vacations. I saw them.
They did. What's interesting about that particular culture is there was a lot of stuff that was unintentional. One of the things being you could sort of just float along at average level of productivity and it was just okay. So
in some cases, beyond below
average. And it was like,
still
oh,
kept your
whatever.
job.
It's just, fine.
which is not good for your culture.
Talking about anybody?
Yes.
Yeah, a few people.
Which is, if culture is important to you. And I think that was the unintentional piece there is I don't know that they gave a whole lot of consideration to culture.
I don't think they did at all.
I mean, I think they did more after you left. They
Yeah.
made a few changes. I think their intent was good, but I don't think they understood.
I think it seemed to me, and
everybody gets a mentor.
Yeah, exactly. It seems to me like there's a lot of companies that maybe they're talking about work culture, maybe they're not. Maybe they're looking at policies that they think are intended to have people stay longer or be happier in their jobs, and maybe they do or maybe they don't. But there's a lot of like unintentional culture.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like the byproduct of the things you choose to care about and you say you care about versus the things that you actually talk about all the time. Right? Like that particular company, they started talking about culture like they cared about it. But what they actually talked about and all of the metrics and all of the things you were measured against was all about billable hours.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody loves to have their life be about billable hours. Just not inspiring. It's not, I don't care.
They weren't able to see the disconnect between billable
work
hours
culture and what we
culture.
need to survive, which is billable hours.
Right.
Like, how do you bring those two things together?
Right. Which is not an easy thing.
No, it's not. But that's what actual work culture is.
Right.
Is how those two things come together. That
Right.
thing in the middle, that is your culture.
Yeah.
So my question is, so unlimited PTO was one. Remote working is another one. And we see this like,
Butts
it's
and
like
seats.
this, butts and chairs. It's like this pendulum, and it seems to swing back and forth depending on the mood of whoever is in charge at the moment, right? Which is
Cambridge Analytica is.
That's right. They are in charge. Let's see what they think about remote work. The phenomenon here is, how much do you trust people to actually be getting their job done versus how much you care about the methods and modes and means by which they do the job? Because I don't care if your butt's in a chair or you're working remote. If your job isn't getting done, your job's not getting done. It doesn't matter. If the thing matters more to me that your butt's in the chair and I don't care that your job's getting done as long as your butt's in the chair, it's a whole different thing. Remote work actually isn't going to fix that problem.
Right.
There's still not the work getting done, right? I don't know. I've always felt like if you're hiring people that you can't trust to say, this is the job that I need done, and working with them to establish parameters to say, I'm not going to say I need this work done by this date, and if it's unreasonable, I don't care. That's why you're working at home, so you can work 24/7.
Right.
That also doesn't get the job done. But if you're not hiring people who you can make reasonable expectations of and trust them to fulfill their side of the deal, it does not matter where their butt is while they're doing it.
Right.
Right? So it almost seems like, I think there are times when having people in the room is certainly more useful. I mean, Grant's experiencing this right now. We're sort of at a juncture with a project that we really all kind of thought was done, and then they sort of threw a wrench in the works, and we had all kind of started moving on to other things, and now we're trying to figure out how to, and that's not something that's easy to do when everybody isn't in the room together, because we have to come up with a strategy, and we have to support each other a little bit more to get this thing done and get that over the finish line, because it looks different now, right? So there are times when working remotely serves a purpose, and there are times when having people in the room serves a purpose. So it's not an all or nothing either.
Right.
And I think that's part of the reason why offshore teams are so difficult to make work, because you never have the face-to-face time. We used to work at a company called MX Logic here in town. All three of us worked there. They had what they called core hours. And so I forget what they were, even like Friday. 9 to 3. Okay. So from 9 to 3, people were in the office, and that was usually Monday through Thursday, right? Like most people opted to just work from home the whole day on Friday. Everybody knew that they scheduled all their meetings. They made sure that they found the people they needed to talk to during those times. And then if at 3 o'clock they went home and worked for another few hours from home, They were heads down getting their work done because they had their questions answered. They had what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
So it honors the fact that sometimes people are better at setting up their environments to be productive. You know, I'm one of those people that when I'm heads down working on code or something, I need background noise, but it's a particular kind of background noise which just happens to be served by having a television show playing in the background. I can't listen to music. So
I'm the opposite. If the television's on.
See, I can't listen to music. I'm a musician.
Right.
I write songs. I sing. I learn music. So what happens is there was a guy who used
I turn the washing machine to spin cycle.
and then sit on top of it. Wait. There was a guy who used to sit next to me at MX Logic, and he played his music over his speakers.
Well, I was going to say, I used to sit next to you, but that wasn't me.
Nothing done.
Yeah. That would drive me crazy.
Because my brain, the minute it starts hearing music, it's thinking about, oh, what key is this in? And where's the harmonies for that melody? And, oh, that was an interesting chord progression in that bridge. Like, how did that work? Like, that's not what I'm familiar with. Or like chord structures and
right.
you know, the form of a song. And, oh, that's weird. Like that song, Abacab by Genesis.
Yeah.
Where Abacab came from, it's literally the structure of the song.
Is it?
Yeah, they do a verse, then they do a chorus, and then they do a verse, and then they do a bridge, and then they do a verse, and then they do another bridge. It's like, and they didn't have any lyrics when they did the song. They just thought it was really cool the way the things, and so they named it Abacab, and they came up with these words that mean nothing.
Huh.
But see how my brain like goes down that road? I got nothing done when he was sitting there.
Yeah.
And it was really frustrating. And so anyway, what I'm saying is remote work works if people are responsible for actually getting their work done. You can't solve that problem by having somebody's ass in the chair.
Right. And in fact, in that situation, you would have been more productive at home, remote working than you would have, but in chair. But depending on when you were there, you may have had a boss who didn't trust you and would do things like, IM you, hey, you there? And as soon as you responded, you would never hear anything from him. And we all realized he was doing that just to see if we were in front of our computers.
We actually had 2 bosses who did that crap.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I think I only had one of them the first time. But
yeah,
if you're going to, you got to trust them. And, you know, I guess trust but verify.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone's not producing, it's probably going to be pretty apparent pretty quickly. So then you deal with that on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to assume that everybody that is in the office is going to be at their peak productivity, especially in this day and age. This is what kills me about corporate culture in this day and age, where the trend is just stick everybody in these rows of tables in this open room, which I can't imagine a worse scenario, a worse situation for productivity.
Yeah.
If you want people to be productive, you don't put them all at a table at these long tables and say, focus.
Yeah.
How could you possibly?
I know.
How could anybody possibly?
It's like sitting kids at a cafeteria table for lunch and saying, don't talk.
Right. We all know it never works, right? And so now you're putting a stoplight up, and when it gets red, everybody has to stop talking.
What are some other things that people kind of try and throw around as like work culture implementation things that you can think of?
Trying to think. I was trying to think. Because,
I mean, does like maternity leave fall into one of these? Is that something that's sort of like work culture?
To me, that's more of a moral thing. I mean,
I think paternity leave, the ones who also let new fathers out, that's very I would think would lean even more culturally, because
it does lean culturally right now. Although my personal opinion is that that's every bit as important as maternity leave.
I agree with you.
I was trying to think. Zappos is often touted as sort of this, they're famous for their work culture, and they're famous for their employee happiness.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What do they do?
That's what I was trying to think
Nitrous
of.
oxide.
Nitrous oxide. They just pipe it straight into the building.
I mean, because all the work cultural things are, some of them are really benefits. Some of them are really nice. Some of them are really boons. A lot of them are, I'm fooling you.
Right.
I'm making you think that you've got this great workplace because I'll leave a basket of snacks on the counter.
Huh.
Oh, God, my employer pays for stuff there I can munch on. Yeah, that's really great. How much of that, did that cost? How much would it cost you to just go to the store and buy it?
Yeah.
It's like we need everybody to stay late tonight because we're coming to the end of the iteration and we got to finish these things. I'm buying pizza.
Yay! Like,
it's like suddenly people don't mind sticking around for an extra 3 hours, and really they could have stopped and got a pizza.
Yeah,
on the way home.
exactly. For $5 if you go to Little Caesars.
So when people are throwing stuff at you that you could do that for yourself pretty easily, and yet it's, my workplace is so great. They bought us pizza because we stayed 3 hours late.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's bad to do that. It's nice. And I think that there's plenty of people who acknowledge on the surface that they're doing that, that they're manipulating. I'll buy pizza, guys. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's when they, we worked for a guy that just, thought that his company was the be all end all because you could bring your dog to work. And this is only like 10 years after everybody was already letting you bring your dog to work. They had a basket of snacks in the break room. He thought that was just like, like they're going to be voted #1 place to work in Denver. And it's like the last player I worked at would send somebody once a week down to Costco and come back with $400 or $500 worth of stuff every week.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that your beef jerky and your little gummy bears is, makes this Denver's #1 workplace.
Has food in the workplace like that killed the vending machine industry?
It may have.
Because I remember early on, we had vending machines.
Yeah. And you had to pay.
Yeah. You put in your 50
They may have
cents
subsidized it a little bit, but you still had to pay.
Yeah. That's funny too. Yeah, it probably killed a lot of mom and pop people who are like, crap, I'm going to get my machine out of here.
Which is probably not a bad thing, because I remember being my cubicle, which I thought was bad at the time. My cubicle was within like 10 feet of one of those vending machines, and all I heard all day long was
cha-chink, cha-chink, cha-chink. Like, yeah. Oh,
this is obnoxious.
So I want to ask the question, because most of these posts I see have led me to wonder, is this focus on work culture a way of covering up the fact that if you have bad leadership, there's nothing you can do to fix that problem, but we're going to try anyway? I mean, we've seen people stay at companies that have none of this kind of stuff because their boss gets them.
Mm-hmm.
Because leadership is loyal, is good, values them highly.
Mm-hmm.
So is this focus on work culture an attempt by companies who all have good leadership to distinguish themselves? Or is it an attempt by companies who can't fix their leadership problems for whatever reasons to try and entice you to come anyway?
I think it's both. And I think the first guys do it. And then the second group of people say, we want to be as good as them. And we want people to be as happy as they would be working for them. And
they think it's that stuff.
They're two separate tracks. And, fixing the hierarchies, fixing that side of things is a lot harder than saying, you know what, guys, we're going to start bringing in catering lunch on Fridays for everybody.
Yeah.
And the unspoken thing is, because we know right now the jobs are kind of crappy and a lot of you aren't happy about some things. So we're going to try to do something we can. And I don't think there's, I don't think it's bad to do. It's sort of like saying, there's multiple factors going on here, and we can fix some easily and some are not easy to fix and take a lot of thinking and a lot of soul searching, but this is something we can throw at you. And I think, I think it's a nice thing. Well, I mean, but like it's a thing now, but I go back to storage tech. Okay. This was the 90s, and the wellness center on campus was a huge gym with everything you could possibly want at a gym, a track, swimming pools, racquetball, tons of weights. They had an eye doctor in that wellness center. So when you wanted to get your annual eye exam, you go down to the wellness center. They had a dentist down there that could do certain work. They had a haircut lady that came out once a week, and they had a dry cleaner that came out every few days. And they had restaurants in most of the main buildings that were subsidized by storage tech, so that you could go down and get a really nice custom cooked lunch for $4 instead of $8. And this was in the 90s. And so, these are wonderful things to have. They really were. But I also saw from the cynical side of me says, hey, if you can keep people on site for lunch, you're going to get more work out of them because they don't have that driving time and that, oh, guys, well, it's about 1:30. We ought to be heading back.
Yeah.
Because when you're down eating in the same building on a different floor with a bunch of your coworkers at the same table, it's kind of like, it's not even, been an hour yet, but we finished because we didn't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
We finished eating. We've been talking for 15, 20 minutes. I get back to my desk. And, that's what I saw was that they kept people on campus for all these various needs. You don't have to go anywhere. So it's sort of like the cynical, you can say, well, they're manipulating people and getting more productivity out of them. But the people are agreeable to it. It's like, I would rather work an extra 1 hour a week instead of traveling to and from lunch when I can just go downstairs and get lunch.
And it's cheaper.
Rather do that.
Yeah.
So everybody wins.
Google does a lot of that stuff. They have a site up in Boulder now. And I was up there a few weeks ago visiting a friend of mine. And then a couple of weeks later, for an event that they sponsored, the charity that I'm on the board of, the nonprofit, we were one of the groups that they sponsored. And so we were there. And they have the 5-star chefs, and they had like breakfast in the morning until a certain time, and then between breakfast and lunch they have like all these snacks and stuff. And then they have lunch, and then they have dessert hour, which is like after lunch until they start serving dinner. It's like dessert and stuff in there.
Really?
And then they do dinner, and then they have dessert after dinner
sometimes, and going downstairs and getting
breakfast.
Because I'm not always a breakfast person, but there's times when you wait and those getting in, coming in 45 minutes early, going downstairs and getting eggs and bacon and some biscuits. And then, being able to walk up to your desk right afterwards, not have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Just take your tray to the trash can and take the elevator up to your desk. And time for some coffee now, and I can get to work after a little nap.
So you guys are very skilled developers, employees that anybody would love to have. How much do things like this attract you to a place versus not? How much does something like that make a difference when you're making a decision, one position or one company over another? Really, like honestly.
Me personally, it's much more about the team and about who I'm going to be reporting to.
Mm-hmm.
The point I was going to make earlier, which kind of touches on what you were saying, is I would be surprised that there were a lot of people that quit because their company didn't have a nice enough culture for them.
Mm.
Almost 9 times out of 10, I would venture to say if someone quits, it's because they have a bad leadership or they have a bad manager.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
So that's what when I was on the job market, that's what I was looking for. I was looking at the team. I was looking at the manager, and the culture's great. The perks are great, but I've worked at those companies. I've worked at a company that had a restaurant downstairs, and it was great. We still went out to eat sometimes because this restaurant has the same food all the time, and we don't want to eat the same food every day. I didn't dislike it, but I wasn't gonna. That wasn't a huge decision maker for me. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I used to love when they tell me I could bring my dog to work. I'm like, what about my cat?
Right.
Yeah, why can't you bring your cat to work? Or
cats are discriminated against all over the world. People are doggists. Because you go to the grocery store, there's a whole aisle, dog food, dog stuff all the way down. The cat stuff gets a half of one side down at the end
of a shelf.
People are totally against cats. Cats get a bad rap. Daryl's like, I hate my cat.
Not my cat.
I hate my wife's cat.
So what about for you, Grant? Like, how much would that influence your decision? Say you have 2 jobs, equal pay, similar types of companies, similar types of, like, how much does that weigh your decision?
Well, I think what you were just starting to describe there is where it would make a difference is where I can't come up with, I can't decide based on all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Like all things being equal.
Both the people who interviewed me, I really liked them, and the stuff they're working on is real cool. I met with some of the other team members. Everything is, pluses all the way up. this guy offers free food in the break room and this guy doesn't.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going to go. So I can see in a lot of cases, I can see where, again, going back to the idea that a lot of the important stuff is hard to change.
Yeah.
It's hard to fix a lot of the really important stuff. But, you know, and because I may not be able to do that, if I can throw in some of these perks that may woo you when you are 50-50 on, I don't know whether I'd want to go there or not.
Yeah.
But I've always been kind of like, perks, as long as there's a coffee.
Yeah.
Grant
loves his coffee.
I have actually worked at places where there wasn't coffee supplied.
I don't even understand
where they did not have coffee makers and you had to buy your coffee. You had to go somewhere and buy coffee. And I was just like, that's an OSHA violation, man. If I don't have the caffeine, I'm going to hurt myself here in the office. And then we got a whole workers' comp thing going. But I thought, to me, that was a rejection. I rejected those people, those work situations. And I told them, I said, this is just, beyond the pale, basically. It's as if you didn't have a bathroom. For employees and that they had to go next door and use the gas station bathroom. Yeah. To me, it's like there's certain things you got to supply and you ought to have a refrigerator where I can put my lunch.
Right.
But when it gets beyond that of like, look at all our snacks and look, you look at all the dogs wandering around. Allergic. It's like, I don't really care because I can easily go out and buy those snacks. It's not that much, but it weighs a little bit. It's if everything else is looking good, that's at the end of the interview, one of those, oh, really? Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Cause we have worked at places where they catered lunches once a week or so, right?
Oh yeah.
I have. Yeah.
Sure.
That was sweet.
Nice,
when you, especially,
not for me, because they almost never think about the glutards in the group, but whatever.
But I always thought that was nice. I always hated the deal where I'd go out to lunch with people and I'd get back and it'd be right after there was some fancy meeting where they had all the catered stuff that was left over and they bring it into the break room. And
you're like, oh man.
There's big tins of Chipotle shredded meat and all this stuff. I'm like, I just went out and ate lunch. Yeah. Let me know when you're going to be bringing all this stuff. I won't go eat.
So for our entrepreneurs, since this is Incubate This, which is typically geared towards helping entrepreneurs do better, at what point in an entrepreneur's journey does this stuff start to become important? At what point do you start thinking about your work culture? Is it only when you have an office and you have a certain number of paid on the payroll employees, or is
it's after your first suicide?
All right, guys, we got to start doing something now.
The culture. Yeah, we're starting to lose people.
We're starting to literally lose people.
Report?
One of the things that I always tell people is it's never too early to start an ambassador program.
Yeah.
And that doesn't speak necessarily directly to employees or people working on your team, but it's all kind of part of the same thing, which is listening to people who are fans of yours or finding people who are fans of yours and having them be part of your brand, right? Like having them be part of your strategy overall for how you interact with the world. So, there's 3 of us. Now we have contractors we work with and we have referral partners and there's more people that contribute to the success of our company. But right now there's 3 of us. I still think it's important, and we're all owners. So we all live and die by whatever decisions we make, so sometimes it's...
So only I'm to blame for my corporate culture? Is that
That's right. But I'm saying
my boss sucks.
Yeah. Oh, wait, I suck. Shoot. But I still feel like it's important for us, and we make those decisions together because it impacts the bottom line a lot more when you're a very small company like we are right now. But I still think there's value in, because all of it seems to point to how you respect the people you work with and how you interact with them and how you place trust in each other. And I think all of us would agree that plays so much more into the resulting policies and perks that come out of that we describe as a work culture, right?
I think a lot of, I would imagine a lot of companies, a lot of entrepreneurs go into it like, I don't want to, I'm starting this company because I don't want to work for someone else. And I didn't like the way they ran things. I want to do things differently. So they go into it knowing what their culture a little bit, right? They have ideas before they've ever hired anybody. And we've talked about that. We've talked about some of the things that we would like to have once we have more employees. But so, I don't think you have to give it a whole lot of thought purposefully, because you already are most likely, my last boss, he never let me do X, whatever. So I'm going to let employees do that.
Yeah.
And where you have to give it some thought is, was he a good boss? Maybe he didn't let you do X for a reason.
Right.
And, I don't know, you try it out.
I think that's the thing for me out of this whole conversation is you can do a lot to set yourself apart when you're hiring people in terms of benefits and perks and these things like Grant was saying. Who you hire, way more important.
Yep.
And maybe that's how you attract the right kind of people, is by having those kind of things. But having the right people working for you, working with you, being the kind of leader who is worth following and who people are willing to say,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll stay for that extra 3 hours because I know this is important, and I know that you recognize my contribution in a way that matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's way more important place to start.
And also, let's be honest, sometimes money talks.
Yes.
I remember, the guy that gave me my first real tech job, loved this guy. I haven't seen him in 20 years. Loved this guy to death, right?
Yeah.
I remember one night, me and another guy stayed late. We had to stay late for, I don't even remember what it was. We were there until like 9 or 10, maybe even midnight. I don't know.
Yeah.
We were there late. We were young. We didn't have families. The next day, Steve comes in and he gives us both a $100 bill. $100.
Yeah.
It's $100. That meant the world to me, to the degree that here it is 20 plus years later, and I still remember it
framed on his wall.
I still have it framed on my wall. Yeah.
Yeah. I got bonuses for a couple projects at MX Logic and the nice thing about them was there was no talk about bonuses.
No.
That's the thing, is when, if you're offered a bonus and you work towards it, that's one thing. But when, you get to the end of a project and things came together well, and your manager says, hey, by the way, there's going to be an extra this much in your paycheck. It's like, it doesn't matter how much it is. It's like,
it's the recognition.
Ooh, I totally did not expect this. And you're really telling me that you recognize.
Now, the flip side of that is I never got bonuses there. And there's probably a reason for that I'll take responsibility for. But I did get a raise once, and I didn't know I got a raise until like a month later. I happened to look at my check stub and thought, oh, wait a minute.
This is
more.
I must give some back.
And then I went back a couple of check stubs and said, oh, no, he gave me a raise. And he never mentioned it.
That's important about the bonuses, though, because I think there were two big projects, and you were leaping by if the corporate culture changes such that bonuses were not something we did, and all of a sudden we start giving out bonuses, people who have been around for 5, 6, 10 years in the company who've worked on some pretty important projects could be slighted. They're going to look and say,
well,
I never got a bonus.
This guy came in years
Yeah.
after me, and he worked on that new project, but I worked on these things a couple of years ago that were huge. That's the whole reason we have a company now, is because of these projects. We didn't get any bonuses back then because times were tight. It was a different culture.
Right.
It would be nice if somebody thought of, we need to go back to these guys and recognize for what they did back then. What was I going to say? Oh, important about the perks. I just was thinking that once you decide to give a perk like dogs or working from home or free food,
you can't take it
you
away.
can't take it away.
Yeah.
I've also seen that happen.
As soon as you shut that down, it sends all kinds of signals.
Horrible messages.
Like if we used to have a lunchroom where you could go down we're closing the lunchroom down.
Then people start getting worried.
I've had that actually happen.
Fiscal.
Yeah.
I've seen that actually happen.
People get worried.
For a job.
Yep.
So,
and it was true. I got laid off a few months after they closed that cafeteria down.
Yeah.
So if they
you're
shut
absolutely
the food
right.
down, you guys are fired.
It's coming.
But
Update your resume.
It is interesting to think about that, because we've probably all been in situations where there was work from home and then it got taken away for a period of time because of abuse by somebody.
Yep.
And it feels like, well, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah.
I signed up for being able to work in my pajamas.
Yeah.
Well, also,
Yeah.
I didn't abuse it. Why are you punishing me because this one guy did? Punish him, get rid of him if you have to, but don't punish the rest of the group for the actions of one guy.
That is also part of work culture, which is we implemented this thing. Somebody didn't handle it well, rather than dealing with that person, because people aren't good at dealing with conflict, especially when it means they might have to fire somebody.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just shut down the whole policy and that will solve the problem. And it's like, it's actually not solving the problem, because you still have that guy. You
created a whole new problem.
And what you really did was punish all of the people who were doing it right.
Yeah.
You took away something from them that they were using right.
Yeah. And they don't know who the bad actor was, so they can't,
usually people know. We all know.
That's true.
I knew.
We all know. Yeah, we all know.
But, and then as an employee, what's funny is that brings up what I would call the Redline rule. You've got a working from home policy. Everything's going along good. And you start to feel like, gosh, more people are more often emailing in the morning saying, I had this come up, so I'm going to work from home today. I had this come up. And you can start to feel it where it's going up.
Yeah.
And there's a feeling of it's being abused. And you're going to hit a red line where management says, that's it. No more working from home. They don't come out and say,
they don't address
hey
the
guys,
problem.
we think there's, you're taking a little advantage of this, and we'd like to rein in a little bit of this impromptu, I'm working from home today. We want to hear about it the day before,
Yeah.
If just, let's rein it in a little, guys. They don't do that. They sit there. It's human nature. We sit there, we stew.
And then we
it's
overreact.
More and more and more and more and more. That's it.
No, they're taking advantage of me.
Yep. And that's the piece where good leaders know how to step in and address issues that they're seeing. They know they can deal with conflict. They can deal with, okay, this is going to be a conversation that's going to be uncomfortable, but we need to have it because there's this other issue and I don't want it to escalate to that point. And that's where leadership matters.
And I mean, maybe this is a whole new topic, but I think companies back in the day, I don't know when this happened, but it seems like within the last 25, 30 years, companies, maybe even sooner, companies realized they didn't have to invest in their leadership. So prior to that, a lot of companies would actually, when you got promoted to a manager, you were hired as a manager, they would send you to leadership schools, right? And a lot of the big companies had their own leadership. They had training systems as part of the companies. Companies don't do that anymore.
Well, especially in
to
tech,
their detriment.
It's like, oh, you've been around the longest and you know the most about the product. Now you're a manager.
And who is the worst person to make a manager?
The guy who's been around the longest and knows the most about the technology.
Who's a big giant geek who has, by definition, no social skills to begin with.
Yeah, no, it's a huge problem in tech. And actually, I watched a video that somebody posted on LinkedIn. Chick-fil-A, one of their 4 things, their 4 pathos or whatever that they live by in their company, one of them is leadership matters.
Yes.
Like we make great leaders because it matters. And it's not leadership by default or leadership by accident.
Yeah. And I mean, it comes back to if someone's leaving your company, it's probably not because of your culture, it's because of who their manager is.
Yep.
And you see that time and time again.
Which all comes back to the absolute number one thing in being an entrepreneur and building a business and building a startup, finding investors, is your team matters most.
Yep.
Teams execute. Teams get stuff done or teams don't get stuff done. And the team is everything. Your idea can be the best thing on the planet. It can be exactly the right time. It can be in high demand. If you have a crappy team, it's very unlikely that you're ever going to be able to make that happen. So, all right. This has been another episode of Incubate This with Grant Parks, Daryl Brogdon, and Cynthia Delaria from Raika Technologies and GotAnAppIdea.com. And go work great. I'll see you guys next time.